I never imagined I'd live to see this day, the day my former master knelt before me, broken and begging for mercy. There he was, the man who once chained me like an animal, now looking up at me with desperate eyes, his life hanging by a thread. My heart pounded as I stared at him. I had dreamed of this moment through countless dark nights of pain. In those dreams, I swore I'd make him suffer as I had suffered. I thought I'd feel anger or triumph. But standing over him now, all I felt was conflicted. Around us, the world burned and crumbled. The distant cries of battle were fading into an eerie silence. He was at my mercy, powerless, bleeding, terrified. And I was free, truly free. For the first time, our roles were completely reversed. He reached out, trembling, blood on his fingers, and whispered, "Please, help me." His words hung in the air, echoing in my head. The same voice that once barked orders and threats at me was now pleading for my kindness. I felt a storm raging inside me. Part of me wanted to turn away and let him feel the same cold neglect I'd known. But another part, a part of me I thought had died long ago, felt the stirrings of pity. This moment, this choice, would define me. Would I become like him, consumed by vengeance, or would I finally break the chain of hatred he'd locked around my soul? To understand how I came to face this impossible choice, you have to hear my story from the beginning. My name is Isaiah Williams, and I was born into slavery on Master Charles's plantation in Georgia. From the moment I took my first breath, my fate was sealed. I was property, to be worked and punished at someone else's whim. I never knew my father. Master Charles sold him off to another state before I learned to walk. My mother, Ruth, was all I had. She would hold me in the quarters at night, humming the same lullaby her mother sang to her. She did everything she could to shield me from the horrors of our world, but on a slave plantation, even a mother's love had its limits. By age 8, I was already picking cotton under the blistering sun, my tiny fingers raw and bleeding. If I slowed down, the overseer's whip would find my back. Master Charles liked to boast that he ran a tight ship. To him, we were nothing but livestock that talked. As I grew into my teens, I saw more and more of Master's cruelty. I saw him beat a man unconscious for accidentally dropping a crate of tools. I saw him sell off a girl barely older than me because her mother dared to beg for mercy. Each incident etched anger and fear deeper into my soul. My mother tried to instill some hope in me despite it all. When I raged that it wasn't fair, she would cradle my head and whisper, "Don't let this place fill your heart with hate, Isaiah. You are meant for more than bitterness." She spoke of God, of patience, of a day we might be free. Her gentle voice was the only light in the darkest nights. But as the years went on, even that light began to flicker. The turning point came when I was 17. By then I was strong from years of hard labor, strong enough to dare the risk of escape. I couldn't stand one more day of bondage, so one humid summer night I made up my mind to run. I told my mother in a trembling whisper. She gripped my hands hard, tears in her eyes, and gave me a final piece of advice. "Whatever happens, stay human, son." Heart-pounding, I slipped into the darkness beyond the slave quarters. I crept through the fields, my senses on high alert. Crickets chirped, the warm night air clung to my skin. Freedom lay just beyond the tree line. I just had to reach it. Suddenly, a rifle cracked through the night. A burning pain seared through my shoulder and I stumbled to the dirt. I had been spotted. Within seconds, torchlights surrounded me and rough hands yanked me up. I'll never forget Master Charles's face materializing out of the dark, contorted with rage. He had personally led the search party to hunt me down. They dragged me back to the plantation yard. As my mother watched, Master Charles ordered the overseer to make an example of me. I was thrown into the barn and held down as they locked heavy iron shackles onto my ankles. The metal bit into my skin. Master Charles himself padlocked the chain to a post. His lips curled in a cruel sneer. Thought you could just run, boy. I own you. Don't you ever forget that. Chained like a rabid dog, I was left in that sweltering barn without food or water. The first day I screamed and pulled at the chain until my wrists bled. No one came. At night, rats scurried in the hay. By the second day, thirst and pain had sapped my strength. I remember staring at a sliver of sunlight through the boards, wondering if I'd ever feel sunlight on my skin as a free man. My mother snuck in on the third night despite the danger. Through the darkness, I felt her cool hand on my feverish brow. "Mama," I gasped, my voice cracking. In her other hand, she carried a small flask of water and a piece of cornbread she must have saved from her own meager meal. She lifted my head and brought the water to my lips. "Drink, baby," she whispered. I drank greedily, tears of gratitude and despair mingling on my face. Before I could finish the bread, a lantern's glare suddenly flooded the barn. Master Charles had caught her. He had been waiting, expecting that my mother might try to help me. "Thieving wench!" he roared, storming toward us. My mother stood up, shielding me even then. He tore the flask from her hand and struck her across the face with it. The metal and glass cracked against her cheekbone, and she collapsed beside me. "No!" I screamed, lunging as far as the chain would allow. I reached for her, but Master Charles shoved me back with his boot. My mother lay frighteningly still. Even in the dim light, I could see blood trickling from her temple. I crawled to her side as far as the chain let me. "Mama?" My voice shook. She managed to open her eyes a fraction, looking at me one last time. "Don't lose yourself, my son," she breathed. Then her eyes fixed emptily on the rafters. My mother was gone. Something inside me died in that moment. I cradled her lifeless body against my chains, sobbing until I had no voice. She had given everything, even her life, to show me love in a loveless place, and Master Charles had destroyed it in an instant. The next morning they took her body away. I was too numb to cry anymore. When Master Charles finally released me from the post a week later, I was not the same boy who had tried to run. I was skin and bone, heartbroken and filled with a smoldering fury. The part of me that my mother had tried so hard to keep gentle had been shattered. I toiled on, alive but empty, for months after her death. Every time I saw Master Charles riding by on his horse, surveying his fields like a king, hot anger burned in my throat. I wanted to hurt him, to make him feel even a fraction of what I felt. But I was still his prisoner, chained now by fear and grief. Then, in 1861, the storm of war that had been brewing finally broke. The Civil War erupted, and for the first time, hope dared to enter my mind. We overheard the masters whispering about it. The Yankees were fighting to end slavery, they said. The thought sent a thrill through my veins. Could it be true? Could freedom be on the horizon at last? Master Charles went off to join the Confederate Army not long after. Before leaving, he handed the running of the plantation to a brutal overseer named Tom. Life under Tom was hellish. He had a rifle and a temper, and without Master present, he felt free to indulge his worst sadism. But I hardly cared anymore. My soul was locked in anger, counting the days, waiting for the roar of Union cannons in the distance. Little did I know, the war that raged across the nation would soon bring me face to face with my destiny and with the man I most hated, in a way I never expected. By late 1864, the war had turned in favor of the Union. We heard distant artillery in the evenings and saw an orange glow on the horizon from burning farms and towns. The air smelled of ash and hope. One crisp autumn dawn, chaos finally reached our doorstep. I was hauling water under Overseer Tom's watch when a booming cannonade echoed nearby. The thuds of distant explosions sent the slaves in the fields into a panic. Tom rode out toward the main road to see what was happening. Within an hour, he came galloping back, face pale. "Yankees are coming!" he shouted frantically. Union cavalry had been spotted not far away, advancing fast. A frenzy erupted. Some of us were too stunned to move. Others quietly slipped off into the woods before soldiers even arrived. Tom barked hysterical orders for us to gather valuables, burn the cotton, do anything. But it was too late. The Union Army was at our gates by midday, blue-coated soldiers sweeping through like a storm. Gunshots rang out as a skirmish broke on the front lawn. I saw Tom fire his rifle at a Union trooper from the porch, a snarl of hatred on his face. Moments later, a Union sharpshooter's bullet found him. Tom crumpled to the ground, the rifle slipping from his hands. The overseer who had tormented us lay dead, and none of us shed a tear. "Freedom! We're free!" someone cried out. But I couldn't move. I stood in stunned silence shock amidst the chaos as Union soldiers swarmed the plantation, securing the area. One Union officer on horseback, a tall white man with kind eyes, called out, "You people are free now. You don't have to be afraid." Free. The word rattled in my chest. After a lifetime in chains, I didn't even know how to feel. I dropped the bucket I was holding. My hands were shaking. Was it really over? I stumbled toward the big house where a Union flag was already being raised over the porch. I felt hot tears on my face, and a laugh bubbled out of me for the first time in years. It was a wild, unbelieving laugh. My mother's dream, freedom, it was happening before my eyes. The soldiers gave us water, food, and directed us to a nearby road if we wanted to follow their camp. Some left immediately to search for lost family or start new lives elsewhere. As for me, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. The anger in my heart had not lessened. It had simply found a new target. Master Charles was out there, fighting for the Confederacy. And now I had a chance to fight against him, against everything he stood for. I approached the Union officer who had spoken and mustered the courage to say, "Sir, I want to join you. I want to fight." He looked me over, a skinny, scarred black youth with fire in his eyes, and he nodded. "Report to Captain Miller over by those wagons," he said. "We'll get you equipped." That's how I became a soldier in the United States Colored Troops. They gave me a worn pair of boots, a blue Union uniform that hung loose on my lean frame, and most importantly, a rifle. The first time I buttoned that Union jacket, I felt a surge of purpose. In that uniform, I wasn't just a former slave. I was a man with a mission. Training was brief. The war was in its final throes, and every able body was rushed to the front. Within weeks, I found myself hundreds of miles from the plantation, marching alongside other black soldiers who, like me, had everything to gain and nothing to lose. We bonded quickly, sharing our stories by campfires at night, tales of loved ones lost, of injustices burned into our memories. In their eyes, I saw the same determination that burned in mine. When I finally faced Confederate forces in battle, I felt no fear. The first time bullets whizzed past my head and cannons roared, I was startled, sure, but inside I was calm, focused. I thought of my mother, of the hell I'd escaped, and a cold resolve filled me. These were the men who fought to keep people like me in chains. Our unit charged into a hail of gunfire in one engagement after another. I saw comrades, my new brothers, fall around me, but I pressed on fiercely. In one battle, a Confederate soldier twice my size rushed at me with a bayonet. We collided, grappling in the mud. He snarled, "You damned Yankee slave," as he tried to gut me. With a roar, I overpowered him and slammed the butt of my rifle into his jaw. He collapsed, unconscious or worse. I didn't care. In that moment, I felt righteous fury coursing through my veins. For every lash mark on my back, for every tear my mother shed, I fought on. Yet war was not the glorious vengeance I had imagined. It was brutal and heart-wrenching. Between battles, I helped carry the wounded off blood-soaked fields. I saw men of all colors crying out for their mothers in their dying breaths. Sometimes, late at night, I'd catch myself trembling, not from cold, but from the weight of it all. Still, I never wavered in my resolve to see the Confederacy and Master Charles defeated. In April 1865, news rippled through the ranks that the Confederate capital had fallen. The war's end was near. My unit pressed on through the Carolinas. Skirmishes flared as retreating rebel units made last stands. I wondered if Master Charles was among these desperate fighters, refusing to surrender. Part of me hoped he was, that fate might give me the chance to confront him before it was all over. That chance came sooner than I expected. During a minor battle on the outskirts of a small Virginia town, our company overran a Confederate encampment. The fight was brief and vicious. The rebels were outnumbered and exhausted. As gunfire tapered off, I moved through the smoky twilight of the battlefield, my heart pounding with a strange anticipation. Men in gray lay strewn on the ground, dead or dying among shattered wagons and fallen banners. I stepped over bodies, my boots sinking in mud. Then I heard a faint voice gurgling a plea, "Help me." The hair on my neck stood up. I knew that voice. I followed the sound and found a crumpled figure under an oak tree, half covered in fallen leaves, a Confederate officer shot in the gut, clutching at a blood-soaked jacket. I knelt down and carefully turned his face toward me. My breath caught in my throat. It was him, Master Charles. His once proud face was gaunt and streaked with dirt and blood. Those pale blue eyes, now clouded with pain, blinked up at me in disbelief. In that instant, the world around me faded. We were no longer soldier and enemy, nor master and slave, just two men face to face after a lifetime of hatred between us. Master Charles opened his cracked lips. "Isaiah," he croaked, recognizing me despite the uniform and the years that had passed. I could only stare, frozen. A tempest of emotions crashed over me. Triumph, rage, sorrow, vindication, all at once. There he lay, defeated and vulnerable, awaiting my next move. My hands trembled on my rifle. This was the moment I had dreamed of, the moment I had cursed him for as I lay chained in that barn. And now it was real, right before my eyes. I stared down at Master Charles, no, at Charles, the man, as he lay gasping in the mud. My rifle was in my hands, still loaded. Every instinct screamed that he was my enemy. How easy it would be to end him right there, a twitch of my finger to avenge all the hurt he'd caused. His lips quivered. "Please, help me," he begged again, barely audible. His once commanding voice was frail and broken. I saw raw fear in his eyes, the same fear I'd felt so many times at his mercy. My heart thundered in my ears. This was justice served on a platter, wasn't it? The man who chained me, who murdered my mother, now pleading for my mercy. My hands trembled as I aimed the rifle at him. I wanted him to feel the dread I had felt, to know his life hung by a thread. Tears of rage and grief blurred my vision. Why should I help you?" I hissed through clenched teeth. "After what you did to me, to her?" My voice shook with years of pent-up pain. I pressed the muzzle of my gun to his chest. Charles groaned, a tear spilling down his cheek. "I'm so sorry," he rasped, his voice cracking. "Your mother, I was wrong. All of it was wrong." His pale eyes brimmed with tears. I had never seen that face, always so cold and cruel, now so utterly human, consumed by regret and fear. I felt a hot stab of anger. Sorry? He was sorry now, with a bullet in his belly and death staring him down? A part of me wanted to scream at him, to make him hurt as I hurt. My finger tightened on the trigger. He squeezed his eyes shut, sobbing, waiting for the end. And then I saw my mother's face in my mind. I heard her gentle voice as clearly as if she were standing beside me. "Don't let this place fill your heart with hate, Isaiah. You are meant for more." The words she'd tried to teach me all those years echoed like a bell in my soul. My grip on the rifle slackened. I looked down at Charles, not as my oppressor, but as a wretched, broken man. If I killed him now, what would I become? Would his death bring my mother back? Would it take away the pain, or would it just spread it to another soul, mine? With a shuddering breath, I lowered my weapon. The rage inside me drained away, replaced by a profound tiredness. "Damn you, Charles," I whispered, my voice thick. "You don't deserve it, but I won't be the monster you were." I tossed my rifle aside and knelt down in the blood-soaked dirt. Charles's eyes flew open in surprise as I gently slipped an arm under his shoulders. He winced, coughing. I reached for my canteen, the same way my mother once brought water to me. His body trembled in my arms as I held the canteen to his cracked lips. "Drink," I murmured softly. He obeyed, each swallow a gargled struggle. I tore a strip from my uniform sleeve and pressed it against his bleeding wound to stanch it as best I could. Charles stared at me as if unable to comprehend why I would help him. "Why are you?" he whispered, voice raw with pain and confusion. "I don't deserve—" He began to weep openly, choking on his words. I felt my own tears welling up, rolling down my cheeks silently. "I'm not doing it for you," I said, my tone gentler than I expected. "I'm doing it for me, and for her." At the mention of my mother, my voice broke. She told me never to lose my humanity, and I won't. Charles let out a shuddering sob. "I'm sorry for everything," he managed again. His hand, slick with blood, fumbled until it grasped weakly at my arm. Can you ever forgive me?" His eyes searched mine, desperate for absolution. A strangled sound escaped my throat, half laugh, half sob at the sheer absurdity of fate. This man had taken everything from me, and here he was asking me for forgiveness. But as I looked at him, pathetic, dying, afraid, I saw not the tyrant who had dominated my nightmares, but a pitiful soul trapped in a hell of his own making. "I forgive you," I whispered, my voice trembling as tears blurred my sight. The truth is, I wasn't just speaking to him. I was speaking to the darkness in my own heart, releasing it at last. "I forgive you, Charles." At that, Charles broke down, sobbing, a deep, harrowing cry that rattled his broken body. "Isaiah, He tried to speak, but fresh blood bubbled at his lips. "Shh, don't try to talk," I whispered, holding his hand. I could feel his life slipping away. His fingers gripped mine weakly as a flicker of gratitude or peace passed through his eyes. Under that old oak tree, in the twilight of a dying war, I stayed with the man who had been my master as he took his final ragged breaths. I kept pressure on his wound and spoke softly, perhaps more to comfort myself than him. I told him that his fight was over, that maybe mercy was the only victory to be found in all this suffering. His labored breathing slowed. A faint smile of relief ghosted on Charles's lips. With one last exhale, his body went still. I closed his eyes with a trembling hand. In the silence that followed, I finally felt the weight of a lifetime of hatred begin to lift off my heart. I knelt there for a long moment, the tears drying on my face. The first stars were peeking out in the dusky sky above, and the gunfire had ceased. The war was nearly at its end. In fact, it would be over within days. But my own war, the war inside my soul, had ended here and now, with a choice to show compassion over cruelty. As I rose to my feet, I realized I was truly free. Free not just from the chains Charles had put on my body, but from the chains of bitterness and vengeance that had bound my spirit. In sparing the man who harmed me, I had ultimately freed myself. And that is how the man who once chained me ended up begging for my help, and how in answering that plea, I found my deliverance.